Time for the Tesla weekly update, and I got Tesla pulled up here on the weekly chart, and we can see that it still cannot break above this resistance level right here, the point 0.5, the 50% fib from the all-time high back in 2021 and the low here back in 2023. So it still is unable to break it on a weekly close. And we can see that it got a good rejection after this doji candle that I talked about last week. Usually that indicated like a kind of a loss of momentum. And sure enough, it was a loss of momentum and price did close lower. But price still didn't go lower than last week's candle, right? Last week's candle went to 233 and this week's candle only went to 236, right? So not really the end of the world. It did close at 239.20, but where can we see where support is? Well, I don't think anything really has changed, right? You can put on the SMA, you can put on the Ichimoku, and we can see that purple line here. That is my 200-week moving average. And I think that could be the target, right? It's at 232.25, so I think maybe next week it probably could wick down there and even possibly get to the top of the cloud and even go possibly back test this 382 at 221 or so. So I think this is the zone from 232 down here to maybe 220, right? It could maybe wick below, but it's approaching a buy territory very, very quickly. And that's why I said you don't really want to buy resistance because resistance was here the whole time. You still want to look at the high time frame support, and the high time frame support is anywhere from 232 down here to maybe 220. And if we put even on the Bollinger Band, we can see something interesting here that it actually closed. Well, let's take this off. The Bollinger Band, it actually closed right underneath the top of the Bollinger Band for the first time, right? That one sits around 240, right? 240 up there, and it closed at 239.20. So it did close a little bit below, and we can see in the past, whenever it starts to close below the band, like right here, it kind of could ride it up like that, or it'll just go sideways. So with the confluence of that closing underneath the Bollinger Band and getting rejected by the 50% fib, I think that is still going to be a big resistance zone until it's able to break above and then finally close maybe back above this 265.13 zone right here to make a higher high. So there's a lot of confluence right now showing that price probably will go sideways to maybe down and maybe get to those lower support levels here. But I think anything below 232 would be a great buy opportunity because this chart is still really bullish. And when you put back on all those indicators here, nothing bearish about that at all. It's above everything, right? So it's just consolidating until it's ready to make another push higher and higher. So there's nothing to worry about. So let's go check out Tesla again on the linear scale. And here we have that same chart that I've always pulled up before. And the blue angle still could be the target. And where does that sit? That sits right next week around 228. So right around that 230 zone. So this is another possibility of going back down to 232 to maybe the 220s. Even maybe that arc down there would be the 220s, right? To retest that bottom arc. So even more confluence saying that it's really approaching a support zone and you should not be afraid of support. You should be happy about support and take your shots, right? Because usually when a bullish chart forms, like it's forming a bullish structure kind of right now, that you want to just take advantage of these support opportunities. And lastly, let's take a look at the log scale. And lastly, this is the log scale version of that GAN, and we can see that it's still just stuck in a range right between the top blue line around 295 and the bottom arc here, which actually does sit in the 180s. But since there's a lot of confluence of support there, there's really no need to come back and back test this zone, especially when you look in the past that this arc has been tested so many times, right? And now it's finally breaking above. So I believe it's only going to be a matter of time before there's a giant, another bullish engulfing candle that closes above this blue level, and that would signal that this blue level would probably flip to support for continuation towards the all-time highs here and beyond. So still nothing bearish about this chart, and I believe that any fear next week or whatnot that you see. I think anything in the low 230s, anything down to 220, or even maybe like that 218 zone, it's just a really good buy opportunity for the long run because this chart is still setting up very nicely to move higher and higher. You just got to take advantage of the opportunities and just be a little bit more patient for it to break out. So far so good. So let's see what next week brings. But I am a firm believer that as price gets a little bit lower, it'll be a great opportunity.